Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 367, and today's date is May 15th, 2014, and the title of this episode is U.S. Pushing the Syria Agenda, Be Prepared for an Event. Now, I've been discussing this quite a bit in other reports, and what we are seeing right now, and what we understand, is that the United States has already designated a new government. It's the paid mercenaries. They have already said that Assad has no future whatsoever in Syria, in the government of Syria. They've kicked out every single Syrian government official in the United States and closed the embassies. We also know they've been shipping armament down into the region to the paid mercenaries in Jordan, where there are thousands upon thousands of soldiers training. We also understand that there's training going on in Qatar. They've been using the propaganda about chemical weapon attacks. They've been using the propaganda about Assad hiding chemical weapons and biological weapons, and we've been seeing the Syrian Electronic Army cyber attack many different news organizations, the military websites, and leaving messages letting us know using Twitter that they're attacking the United States, which is kind of ridiculous. But when we look at this and we see what's happening, now what's happening is that the government officials in the United States and in many other nations, France, Germany, the Arab nations, they're all together talking about Syria, and they've been doing this since Wednesday. And what has been learned is that there are thousands upon thousands of troops ready to go into Syria. Something is going to happen because they just can't say, let's go in and charge, so they're going to have to use some type of an event. Now, it could occur in Syria, where they try to assassinate Assad. They've tried this once before. They might be bringing in agents into Syria, and they might make an attempt on his life and kill him. Or there could be some other type of event here in the United States or in Europe saying that Syria caused this chemical weapons attack in Europe or the United States. They did a cyber attack. So we're going to have to see what is going to occur, because they are getting ready to do something. And we can see all of this starting to occur at this point because we understand. And when we look at everything, is armaments being shipped, government officials removed from the United States, embassies closed. The new government was announced by the president. The president also said that Assad has no future in Syria whatsoever, and they're not letting them remove the last 8% of the chemical weapons out of Syria at this time. And we understand the elections come up June 3rd. So we're going to get into this a little bit later in the report, and we'll break it down exactly what's going on and what's going to happen. Let's get into the economic collapse news. And we understand that Europe is in deep, deep trouble. Their first quarter GDP is pretty darn bad. It did not meet expectations. And what we are seeing is that many, many countries, the Netherlands, Greece, Portugal, Cyprus, Finland, Italy, France, Czech Republic, Romania, Bulgaria, pretty much have anywhere from 0.1% GDP all the way down to negative 1.5% GDP. So we can see right now that Europe is in big trouble. They are in a depression. It is not improving. France has said their economy has completely stalled. Of course, they used the propaganda back in the summer of 2013 and going into 2014 that they see great improvements. It's really going to move forward, and it's completely stalled. It is going absolutely nowhere. Italy, the same thing, and the rest of the countries that I mentioned. So we can see that the economies of all these European nations are not getting better. And of course, the IMF and the World Bank, they're all out there telling us that it seems like everything will be fine. It'll get better in the later half of this year. And what that really is telling us is that it's not going to get better, because every time these government officials tell us it's going to get better, it's always the opposite. It never happens. Now, surprisingly, here in the United States, the Empire Manufacturing all of a sudden rebounds to be the best in 4 years, because it missed completely and it was terrible last month, and this month, wow, incredible. But right now, the Philly Fed declines, led by drops in new order shipments and employee work week. The Philly Fed, all the key components, pretty much declined in April at this point. So a lot of this data coming in from the government and these states seem like they're a little manipulated. They'll go back, they'll revise them, they'll make it seem like, oh yeah, you know what, that really great report that we did with the Empire Manufacturing, how it rebounded. Well, we kind of miscalculated a little bit, and we had to revise it down, and actually it missed. And we see this happen time and time again. Now, of course, what they're saying now is that the initial claims for unemployment plunged to its lowest level since May 2007. And we know what happened in 2008. We had the recession. So we can see right now it doesn't matter who's claiming what for the unemployment, because they eventually will not count them anyhow. Because as soon as they don't get an interview in 4 weeks and they're continually sending out resumes and they're not getting any answers back, they're dropped off. They're not counted in unemployment. So it doesn't really matter. All these numbers right now are completely fake, phony, and false, and they're really not giving us any picture except this fake illusion that they want us to believe. And this is why I look more into how retail is actually doing. We saw Macy's completely missed their sales. We see Walmart right now completely missing their sales. Of course, they're blaming it on the weather again. I mean, oh, first quarter, that was the weather. And this quarter coming up, it's going to be because it's too hot. They're missing all their estimates. Is because the people don't have work. They don't have good paying jobs. They're underemployed. And this unemployment number of 6.3% is completely phony. Because let's look at some of the evidence here. Go back to last year. The unemployment was much higher. It was closer to 8%. But we didn't see sales like this decline. Housing was booming. So when the unemployment rate comes down, why are retail sales continually getting worse? Because starting 2013, going through 2013, every quarter, unemployment has gone down. Coming into 2014, we're at the lowest point yet. But what we're seeing now is everything getting worse. Now, if more people are employed, that means more people have disposable income. That means people are very comfortable. They're going to save their money. They're going to spend because they feel comfortable in their job. They feel secure. But guess what? People do not feel secure. They're nervous. We've had announcements of layoffs, and of course, the announcements come before they start actually laying off. And a lot of these layoffs are divided over 1, 2, 3 years. And it's about 6,000 this year, 6,000 next year, and this is the way the companies do it. So we are going to see layoffs continue throughout this year, and it's going to get worse. And of course, the unemployment's going to come down, and they're going to say, see, look, unemployment's now at 5.8, and you're going to see even more retail stores close. You're going to see housing completely at a standstill, declining, no one's buying. This is what you're going to see. Now, industrial production plunged by most in 5 years, and the industrial production slumped by 0.6%. This is the biggest miss since April 2011. After its March rebound of 80 out of 81 economists thought industrial production would have done something better in April. Boy, they were wrong. If you look at the true economy and not the government-issued numbers, you can see what is actually going on. Most of these businesses are just hanging on. And like I said, the college graduates who are graduating right now, 80% cannot find jobs. And most of them are finding part-time jobs. I mean, I have my wife's cousin, I mentioned this before. Yes, he just got the job 20 hours a week at $14 an hour. I mean, how is he going to pay for a student loan? How is he going to live on his own? He can't. He has to live with his parents. He's only working part-time. He's still sending out resumes looking for that full-time job. It's not happening. It just won't work. And he went to Binghamton University, and he has to pay for his education. And all that money he's earning will just go to the student loans. He'll have nothing left over as he continually sends out resumes and gets no responses. Now they're bringing back, and I mention this quite often, the subprime, because they need to pump up this real estate market. And there was a company back in 2006, 7, and 8 called Ditech, and it was known as the leader in subprime. The bulk of the mortgages were interest-only, low documentation subprimes, and Ditech was a pioneer in offering 125% loans, allowing the borrower to borrow more than the sale price. Well, guess what? They're back. They're doing the same thing again. Because why? They need to pump this up. And we might see a slight bump in real estate. And of course, the corporate media, the government, the Fed, they're all going to be out there. Oh my God, real estate's rebounding. Happy days are here again. And what you're going to see is this small little bump up, and then it'll start to decline, because less and less Americans won't be able to purchase these homes. It will get more and more difficult as time goes on. And we can see it by all the numbers and what the actual companies are doing. Again, I've said this many times. If the real estate market is improving, mortgage departments in big banks and smaller mortgage companies do not lay off people by the tens of thousands. They don't do it. You expand because more people are taking out mortgages. But from the numbers, we can see that they are not. They can't. Remember, back in 2007, 2008, what happened? 38% of Americans lost their wealth. They have bad credit, foreclosures, short sales. They lost their jobs. They can only find part-time. If they did find a full-time, it's for less money. So they are not making the same income. They have bad credit. They had a foreclosure or a short sale. They're not in a position to go out and purchase a home. And guess what? They're not going to do it at this time. They haven't saved the money for a down deposit. Oh, wait. You don't need money for a down deposit. 0%, 3%. You can just move in whenever you like. Actually, go to Ditech. They'll give you anything you want. And they're back doing the same tricks again. Now, we understand that the Fed has been telling us that, yes, we've been tapering because the economy is improving, and then we come to find out that Belgium has been purchasing the treasury bonds, and the Fed hasn't really been tapering. They've just been moving their funds and creating money and sending it to Belgium for them to be the proxy to purchase this treasury bonds. And what we're seeing right now is Russia dumps 20% of its treasury holdings, and guess who purchased it up? Belgium. Belgium bought another $40 billion in March. So this tells us there is no recovery. They're making us believe there's a recovery. They're keeping the illusion alive. Because if they told us we are headed toward economic collapse, what do you think everyone would be doing right now? People would be going crazy. They would say, what, this economy is not real? They can't let that happen until the very end, because of course they need to steal all their wealth. They have to keep people in the dark until the very last minute, so there's absolutely nothing they can do. And this is why they're keeping the illusion alive, because eventually they will blame this on another country. And meanwhile, what they're doing is they're removing all of our rights. Well, in their minds, this is what they're doing. For the people, if we actually stand up, we can say, no, these are our rights. All these laws that you create do not override the Constitution. I'm sorry. The Bill of Rights, Constitution, law of the land. This comes first. Everything else is under it. According to Marbury and Madison, anything that's repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. So any law that they create that is repugnant to any of these rights that don't go along with it is completely null and void. And this is what the people, because you have to remember, it's the people who gave the contract to the government. And we said you need to follow this and abide by this. And they're not, because they're trying to wiggle out of everything and create their own laws to try to override and to make exceptions to our rights. And what we're seeing right now is the Department of Justice, the U.S. government, appears to take its no Fourth Amendment protections for foreigners to absurd new levels. Because foreigners have no Fourth Amendment protections, it means that any American lose their Fourth Amendment protection when communicating with foreigners. Providing information to a foreign person means that it's okay for the U.S. government to snoop, spy on you without any type of warrant whatsoever. The Department of Justice further defends this by saying, effectively, that foreign governments might snoop on it as well, so that makes it okay for the United States to do it. They're effectively arguing that since foreign governments might look at the info too, you should have no expectation of privacy in any communication with foreigners, and thus you waived all Fourth Amendment protections in that content. Well, I have a problem with this. First of all, as an American person, I have these rights, and these rights apply to me. You cannot take them away. Secondly, how do they know that I'm talking to a foreigner if they're not spying on me already? Interesting, because they're telling me that all my communications, my emails, and everything that I'm doing is null and void according to their reasoning. But how do they know I am unless they're spying on me? And let's take it a step further. If they're not spying on me, they just can't look at my information because they assume I'm speaking to a foreigner. They would have to go get a search warrant. So what they're actually saying is that we're spying on everyone. Because how would they know? You see what I'm saying? They can't tell if I'm speaking or trading emails with a foreigner unless they're already spying on me. If they're not spying on me, they would have to spy on me to figure it out, or to get a search warrant because they suspect that I'm conversing with a foreigner. It doesn't even make sense what they're saying. So what they're really saying is we're just spying on everyone. And if it finds out that it's with a foreigner, it's okay. Now, we understand that many agencies in the United States are purchasing weapons. IRS, Department of Education, the Postal Service. And again, why do they need these weapons? I mean, United States Post Office, they need ammunition, weapons because they're delivering packages? It makes no sense. And of course, today, the Department of Agriculture is buying an unknown amount of submachine guns and high-capacity magazines. The United States Department of Agriculture is probably one of the last federal agencies you would ever expect to request a substantial amount, if any, of firearms. But that is what they're doing. On May 7th, the Agricultural Department requested an unknown number of submachine guns. The department also states it wants to get its hands on weapons with night sights in the front and the rear and magazines with 30-round capacities. That is very odd. What would they need this for? Of course, the law, the executive orders and the laws that they're trying to pass is American citizens can have no more than 10 rounds. But they want to order clips with 30, magazines with 30. How interesting. And it's funny because the other night I was watching the movie V, and there was a certain section in there that they talk about the two policemen who are riding in the car saying, wow, I wonder what's going to happen with the armed forces that are completely armed to the people who were protesting who weren't armed. And the other police officer looked at the police officer who asked the question and said, what always happens, those with the weapons will shoot down those people with no weapons. And we can see why our founding fathers said, we need the Second Amendment. Because when the government gets out of control, it is the people that say no more. It is the people that say peacefully, we cannot have this happen anymore. And what normally happens is the government, using force, comes down on the people because they know they're wrong. They know they're in the wrong, and the only way, just like a little kid who knows they're wrong, screams, yells, and fights, they are like a little kid. They will scream, yell, and fight and use force. They will hit, they will punch, they will use weapons on those people accusing them. This is how they work. But of course, the American people, they do this peacefully at first. But when the government uses force on the people, we have a way to protect ourselves. We have a way to fight back. We have a way to say, no, you will stop now. We are the parent, you are the child. You signed a contract with we the people. You have not followed it. You are now removed. This is how it works. And you can see in all the societies out in Europe and many countries, those people with no weapons, no way of protecting themselves, are always gunned down when they try to protest. And we are seeing this happen in many places. And we have to remember, the United States central bankers control puppet regimes all over the world. In Thailand, they control the puppet regime, and they are using force now against what they like to call the terrorists. You mean the people that want this puppet regime out. And we see this in Ukraine, we see it in the Middle East, we see it in Africa. And Thailand's anti-government protests enter their fourth day. Observers say prospects for violent confrontation are increasing, with reports of government supporters stockpiling weapons. They're afraid that people are going to rise up, and they're taking precautions. Now, the Western media is out there consistently telling everyone that the current regime is democratically elected, and that the elections earlier this year were blocked by protesters before being thrown out by Thailand's courts. Accused, and they're saying that the people were trying to block. They didn't, they were trying to make it difficult for people to vote. And what we come to find out is that the polls were pretty much empty. The people didn't even want to go to the polls, and the existing government was not elected freely. It was put into place. It's the same thing that is happening in Ukraine. What they are doing there is they have the puppet people already picked out. This will not be an open and fair election. They will just have these people take the place of whoever is there. And this is not all the people coming together and voting. So we can see right now these puppet regimes are always the same. Set up a dictatorship. Anyone that criticizes or goes against the government, they are now the terrorist. They need to go after them. Now, a couple reports ago, I talked about China making a deal with Kenya, building a railway link that's going to cost about $3.8 billion. And it's going to go from Mombasa to Nairobi to Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and South Sudan. Well, if you listen to my other reports, I always say, wherever China is, and whenever they're making a deal that bypasses, has nothing to do with the United States, that's not going to use the dollar whatsoever, guess what happens? Some type of emergency shutdown of embassies, some type of an emergency travel restriction, some type of, we believe there's going to be terrorists in the area. Guess what? Britain and the United States warned of a potential terrorist attack in Kenya. I mean, the clearinghouse for the yuan and the new railway that they just made a deal with Kenya? Wow, British citizens were urged to immediately leave the East African countries, port cities of Mombasa, following a series of attacks. The latest warning issued on Tuesday and Wednesday may further damage Kenya's tourism sector. Britain's Foreign Office said that unless you absolutely have to travel, all its citizens should avoid Mombasa and the surrounding area following the recent terrorist attacks. The U.S. Embassy in Kenya also warned its citizens of the continued threat of potential terrorist attacks and says you should not travel there whatsoever. Look away, don't come down here. We don't want any Americans seeing what we're actually doing, so just stay away from the area because we're going to go after this new deal that's coming up. We're going to create war to stop this entire thing that's going on here. And this happens time and time again. Now, U.S. is also calling for immediate military deployment in South Sudan because, again, the railway system is part of this whole entire thing. They're making deals. And, of course, China is there pumping in billions of dollars into the infrastructure. And, of course, now we need more military in Sudan. Now, Russia is making a deal with Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan's upper house of parliament ratified Thursday an agreement with Russia on establishing a joint regional air defense shield. The shield will become part of the unified air defense system of the Commonwealth of Independent States. And this is going to comprise of Russia, Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Tajikistan, and they're going to create a shield here because they understand that the United States central bankers are pushing a war agenda forward, and they're taking all precautions and getting ready for this war. Now, Russia says they are open to gas negotiations with Ukraine. And, of course, Yatsenyuk just the other day said, listen, we will pay the bill as long as they give us the discounted prices. And, of course, Russia said, yes, we will continue gas price negotiations with Ukraine on the condition that the country begins to pay off its massive $3.5 billion debt to Gazprom. So we can see this is going to go back and forth. Russia already has the kill switch for the gas system to say, listen, you are not getting any more gas unless you prepay. This is going to affect Europe in a very big way. We're going to have to see what happens come June 2nd or 3rd when they expect the prepayment. Now, just a day or two, Donetsk was out there saying that, we had a referendum and we are now independent of Ukraine. We have autonomy. We want Ukraine military out of Donetsk. We give them 48 hours. Now they're saying they have 24 hours to withdraw the troops. And come, Friday or Saturday, we will have to see what does occur. Will Ukraine remove its troops, or will they intensify their anti-terrorism program? And will there be an all-out type of skirmish civil war going on in that region? Now, we understand from a German newspaper that there are Blackwater mercenaries in Ukraine. And we knew this. We knew Saudi Arabia was setting up paid mercenaries. We know they're bringing in military assets. We understand the paid mercenaries are the ones who are handling all the terror in the country. And Russia right now wants and is asking the United States, are there paid mercenaries inside Ukraine? And so far, the United States has not answered at this time. But the West is warning, and they've given this warning to Russia: do not disrupt Kiev polls. And I believe that Russia is going to be having a drill during the election right on the other side of Ukraine, on the border, and they're flexing their muscles, saying, listen, we're here still, so be careful what's going on. And of course, the United States is out there saying that if they try to interrupt or do anything to hurt the free election process, they will impose more sanctions. And these sanctions are not going to be like the other ones. They're going to go to certain sectors. And actually, what they said is they will use a scalpel rather than a hammer to make its economy bleed through focusing on new investment in the sectors. These are the type of sanctions that the United States central bankers are going to impose on Russia. Now, of course, these are words. They haven't done anything, and all the sanctions they have done are on Russian individuals and on companies, and most of the Russian government officials have removed all their assets and everything away from the West. They're consolidating it into Russia, and they're becoming completely separate and apart from the West at this time. Now, we understand the situation in Ukraine is getting worse. It is not getting better. And Condoleezza Rice is out there, and she is saying that, we need to send in more troops to the Baltic states. Putting American boots on the ground in the Baltic states is the solution to stopping Russia's further territorial ambitions. And this is coming from Condoleezza Rice. Now, Rice said that while she agreed with sanctions imposed by President Barack Obama on Putin and his inner circle, the real solution to halting further Russian advancement is to increase America's military presence in the region. I would favor putting American troops in the Baltic states. We put 600 there. I would put many more, she said, suggesting a brigade or tens of thousands of troops. We would be needed to be effective in deterrent to Putin and the way to reassure our allies that they will be protected. Well, I've said this many, many times. Any leader in the United States government that would like to go to war or send troops to the area, as leaders, I believe they should lead the troops. They should be in the front. They should be leading us, showing us that they are true leaders. Like they did with Obamacare. All the government leaders sat down in front of the computer. They all signed up in front of the American people to show us how great it was. Oh, wait, they didn't do that. Well, here's their great chance. They keep talking war, more troops, and of course they're sitting behind a desk in a cube in an office staring at a screen. Instead, let's take them. Anyone who, war? Follow me. Step this way. You're going to go right to the front. Let me know how this goes, because you're the ones who's calling for it. So you're going to be on the front line. Bring your children, your family, anyone that we need up there. You're going to be the line, just like they did back in the day. The leaders were out there with their troops supporting them. We need the same thing. If you are a true leader and you really, truly, in your heart, believe that we need to go to war, and you believe in this war, you need to be out there in the front. Now, we understand in Libya, things are not going well. The troops aren't being paid. The Libyan people are really pushing. They're taking over the country. And we understand that the Libyan government has made a call to the international community and said, listen, we need help. Of course, the United States responded and said, we give you 2 months. Well, it looks like the United States is prepping to go in. The Pentagon said Tuesday it was temporarily moved nearly 200 Marines to Sicily from their base in Spain as a precaution due to concerns about unrest in Libya. The Pentagon has been moving military assets and troops because they're getting ready to be deployed into Libya. And we can see they are building this up. They'll be heading into Libya, and we're going to see something happen in Syria. We already know that Iraq is purchasing a huge amount of weapons. There are military personnel training the troops in Iraq. So everywhere you look, everything seems to be falling apart at this time. Now, Russia is out there, and they're saying that we need to have the third round of Geneva talks. We need both sides to come together, and we need to have a discussion, and the agenda has to change, and it has to include other things than removing Assad. And of course, you know what's going to happen. The United States central bankers, they don't want peace. They don't want a Geneva talk. They don't want to talk about anything that has to do with peace and Assad staying in power, because their whole entire motive, their whole entire agenda is to remove Assad. Now, General Dempsey is out there that's saying that Syria militants need more to oust Assad. He went on to say that the United States is not providing the militants, the paid mercenaries, in Syria what they would need to oust President Assad. The militants have no force capable of waging attacks against the Assad government, and we're not on the path currently to provide that. They need something that eventually will be able to hold ground, and they need a counter-terror capability, all of which is responsive to Syrians. On Wednesday, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry embarked on a trip to the Middle East. The focus was on the Syrian conflict. The top diplomat met with foreign ministers of the key nations supporting the Syrian paid mercenaries: Britain, France, Egypt, Germany, Italy, Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and United Arab Emirates. What do you think they're doing there? You think they're just sitting around saying, oh, look, we lost the battle there. Assad has the country. No, that's not what they're doing. They are creating the next event. They're putting the plan and they're pushing the agenda forward. They are ready to go. Right now, the British Foreign Secretary William Hague says the representatives of 11 Arab and Western countries plus Turkey have agreed to ramp up support for the paid mercenaries in Syria. Does this kind of remind you of August 2013 when we had the false flag event, when I reported going through those months, was it April, May, June, July, about how they're training soldiers in Jordan, getting ready for this battle, getting ready for an event? Here we are again. They are moving this. And right now, John Kerry said that he's seen the raw data from the chemical weapons that are used. And he's saying that, yes, he does support what France has said, that it really looks like Assad used these chemical weapons. And he went on to say, I've seen the evidence. It's not verified yet and hasn't been confirmed, but it looks pretty darn good. But I see the raw data that suggests that there may have been a number of instances in which chlorine has been used in the conduct of war, and yes, it looks like Assad might have used this. Here we are again. They are getting ready. Now, what is coming, and I've said this before, there are troops being trained in Jordan, in Qatar. How many? Quite a bit. Saudi Arabia has sponsored tens of thousands of fighters to form a southern rebel front in Syria. The force is called the Southern Front and said to contain 30,000 fighters assigned to southern Syria. Rebel sources said the Southern Front was trained and equipped in Jordan. Surprise, surprise! And under the supervision of the United States. They said about 2,500 U.S. trained fighters equipped with light weapons were sent from Jordan to Syria over the last 6 months. They are getting ready for something really big, and it's coming as much sooner than everyone actually thinks. And they're either going to try to assassinate Assad first, because the elections are coming up, and if they can't get that to work, they are then going to push this agenda forward, and they're going to use some type of an event. It might be an event in Syria. It might come to Europe, because they've been using the propaganda that Syria is the launching pad for terrorists. Explosives have been shipped to embassies and other areas of unknown destinations from the State Department of the United States. And these explosives, there's quite a bit of it. Do you think they're planning something big at this point? We have the Malaysian flight completely missing. We have the CNN report that says Assad has been hiding chemical and biological weapons. What do you think is happening right now? Do you see the picture coming together? 30,000 fighters trained in Jordan. There's already 2,500 U.S. trained fighters already in Syria. John Kerry is meeting with all the nations. They're all supporting this. They are getting ready for something huge. Okay. Now, we understand tomorrow, May 16th, Operation American Spring is going to happen, where millions of people are supposedly going to march into Washington, D.C., and they want President Obama, John Boehner, and others, they want them completely out. They want them to remove themselves. Now, the only concern I have about this is, first, it's called the Operation American Spring, and of course in the Middle East they called it the Arab Spring, so the two terms kind of relate to each other, and that's kind of suspect to me. We also understand that they've been saying there's absolutely no weapons. Do not bring weapons because it's the law. This is going to be peaceful, and yes, it should be peaceful. The thing I'm worried about is so many people there. They will put, and I'm saying they, United States central bankers will place agent provocateurs within the crowd and start something by shooting with a firecracker to make it seem like these people were using force to get the government out. And then you will see the force of the government move in. And the corporate media, the government will make it look like these people started something. This is the false flag, where they make the other group look like they did something and they need to respond to it. And here we could see martial law. Here we can see DHS being activated at this time. So we need all eyes open. Anyone out there seeing something, report in, let us know, and we're going to have to watch this very, very closely. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.